Hey, how y'all doing today? This is Marcus Simmons at this presentation about Operation Sea Spray. When did this happen? Yeah, Ocean Sea Spray happened in September 26, 1950. It happened basically around the time when ethical principles probably wasn't in place when they started even spraying these microbes on the northern coast of California. So I mean, they sprayed them for 6 days. People was exposed to these toxins. The most common is, where did it happen? Basically, it happened around in San Francisco, California. This happened in San Francisco, California, on the outer skirts. This was basically something that happened that these people were not aware of at the time, and wasn't even informed consent on it. It violated a lot of principles. It endangered a lot of lives, a lot of microbial life, that was around that area. It basically gave the biological economy in the area, problems too. A lot of different things took place with these unethical practices by our government, with Ocean Sea Spray in San Francisco, California. What is Operation Sea Spray? Operation Sea Spray basically, these Navy vessels called minesweepers, they was spraying microbes called serratia marstans around the coastlines on the outer skirts on the northern coast of California. It affected a lot of people around that coastline, and not just California, but it just impacted them, San Francisco, California, the most, because that's where it pretty much spread rapidly at. This was basically practiced by the government that pretty much violated a lot of rights, human rights at that, pretty much. But I don't know if around the time, if this was, was considered ethical, or they had a lot of principles that was there's a lot of principles that are applied to this that's really good, and there's some bad too. Operation Sea Spray, because a lot of things came good out of it. Basically, they started by spraying. They tried to see how far, it'll spread, and basically, it was to basically attack a big city to see the effects of terrorist attacks on biochemical weapons. And they tested this on big cities, and they tested this all around the world, and this was practices that was going on for a very long time. Even after it happened, they were still doing these practices all around the world, and it got 200, maybe over 200. It was just 200 confirmed cases of them doing this. So this isn't, San Francisco wasn't the only place they did this at, but this is where the focus is at for Operation Sea Spray in San Francisco, California. Okay, so it not, like I told y'all, it not just and basically affect the San Francisco, California. It affected people around the coastlines of San Francisco, California, also, because like I told you, the microbial life spread all around, and it started affecting people in ways. And basically, this stuff wasn't tested, so a lot of stuff like what you see in this picture on Scientology, it's a dangerous alien cult. They got practices that was unethical and morally wrong, because you didn't let your people know about it. So that's a little bit of, about what is Operation Sea Spray. Who was involved? Basically, the government and the U.S. Navy basically orchestrated this right here. It was, like I told you, it was a deceptive tactic for them spraying these serratia marstans, I can't pronounce it, but serratia marstans all around the northern coast of California with and they sprayed these for 6 days before it stopped. It stopped 6 days after, but like I told you, they practiced this well upon this first encounter that they actually did. This actually affected 11 people, giving them pretty much a urinary tract infection when they urine was showing up with a red hue, and they traced it back to the Serration Martians. And this man named Edward J. Nevin, he was pretty much recovering from prostate surgery at the time. So they don't know exactly if this may have affected his death, and it may not have, but it probably wouldn't have triggered if this wasn't going on. So I mean, like I said, his family tried to go for a lawsuit. They got quickly denied of the lawsuit. I ain't gonna get into details about that because that's it's a lot of details that go into that case. A lot of human being rights were being violated. Like I said, a lot of human being rights were being violated. And on my next couple of slides, I'm gonna tell you what it upheld and pretty much what it violated in terms. And it, to me, it goes both ways. It depends on what your stance on the situation is. But I feel like practicing this on big city population is probably not a good idea because things can happen like this that are unknown, especially if you're not testing the virus in certain environments or even testing to see how it'll affect other humans. Things can come out like this, then it'll be deemed as unethical practices by the government for doing these things. What it a whole? Acknowledge the extent of the principles which an action produces beneficial consequences for society. The principle of social benefit was upheld because basically the principle of social benefit is if it helps the people as a whole, if it helps society as a whole, it's a good thing pretty much because it's going to help them prevent viruses like this from happening because they going to pretty much have a existing experience on pretty much studying these viruses, having better response times to these viruses that are happening. And I feel like it upheld this principle of social benefits just based off them principles. Look at the COVID-19 virus. They didn't know much about the virus when it came out, but pretty soon after they studied it a little bit, they ended up coming up with a better solution. So I feel like, and they ended up coming up with a vaccine for it to help control and contain the COVID-19 virus. So I mean, it was helpful as a whole because we may have not got this far if they wouldn't have did these unethical practices. It also upheld the principle of benevolence, help those in need, because as humans, we don't know what we need. Basically, we don't know what's going on. We're blind to a lot of things that's going on in the world and blind to a lot of deceptive tactics by the government. So this, like I said, this can go both ways. It actually helped the human beings as a whole because, like I said, COVID-19 was a big issue and it forced people to change their behaviors on what they was doing and so with social interacting. So the principle of benevolence it helped those in need to make sure that if anything comes about another virus or outbreak, they'll be better equipped to contain this outbreak right away, whether than the outbreak covering and becoming a global catastrophe and really hurting us on a global scale. So the principle of benevolence was upheld in this principle. What did it violate? The principle of autonomy. We talked about this in class. The principle of autonomy is pretty much like you have control over your body, your actions. So the fact that they did this undercover and they did deceptive tactics to make this happen, it really violated these principles because people was around breathing these microbes in. And like I said, it wasn't tested on humans to see how it affect humans. So they didn't know what to expect from it. They just was looking for results on how it would affect a big city. And they got their examples from testing from 43 different sites, and the principle of autonomy was basically you force these people, not letting these people know, you didn't give them informed consent, didn't debrief them, didn't tell them how long the effects would go on in their body, what it would do to their body, because they really didn't know. They didn't test it. This just was something that they tested, just to see what the outcome would bring. This could have killed a whole city population. Principle of justice. Like I said, Edwin J. Nevin family, went out and tried to file a lawsuit because it felt like it was a wrongful death on their part, because he probably would have died if they didn't conduct this experiment and the way they conducted this experiment, it could have happened a different way. You know, it could have been ran in multiple ways and multiple facets. But this is what it violated right here, principle of justice, because they didn't give his family compensation for that. They didn't give her compensation for that. So that's bad, because not to compensate a family for something you did, the government created. If it didn't happen, he probably wouldn't be dead, or, you know, dealing with that issue, and his family wouldn't be having to deal with that issue either. My stance on it, according to the principles of autonomy, I feel like Operation Seaspray should have been forbidden, with the exception of conducting a study in a controlled environment. I feel like if you think logical, if you run an experiment, you will want to, you know, inform consent people on, you know, what'll happen, what the effects will be on their body. Is it going to be long term, short term? Debriefing them after, giving them treatment as needed, compensating them. That would be the best thing for that situation if you were going to run that type of experiment anyway. You might as well let the people know you're doing it, to give people the chance to back out or keep going with the experiment. All right, the principle of social benefit, basically saying this should have been permitted with the inclusion of informed consent debriefing. Like I said in the previous stance that I just permitted on autonomy, you should have just basically came up and gave them informed consent on the experiment, then debriefed them on the experiment, gave them treatment, and helped them people out. And then that'll build trust in the community that you are built to try to uphold. And that's the most important thing to me, is the principle of autonomy and the principle of social benefit. And it upheld them in a way, and the unethical practices of our government basically put a lot of people at risk. And this could have been avoided with just conducting a simple experiment. This is my works cited page right here, pretty much where you can go get all the information that I got about this experiment. You know, a lot of information is you can gain from this. You can go look some more information up yourself. But this is my experiment on, and this is my presentation on Operation Seaspray. I hope you enjoy it, and thank you.